Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 41, featuring Vincent Somsen from Winding Tree, the head of partnerships. Welcome, Vincent. How you doing today?
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for inviting me, and looking forward. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us here. I'm looking forward to the talk too. Winding Tree is a very cool kind of Web3 travel company looking at creating a decentralized peer-to-peer open source solution for the travel industry. So we're going to be talking about that. And, the topic for today, even more broad than just maybe travel, is really how the blockchain and Web3 is impacting a lot of other industries. We like to look at some outside of the box use cases here at Web3 Warriors, as much as we do love to talk about creatives and artists in the metaverse and on the blockchain. We talk to a lot of inspiring artists. We've also talked to Steve from Nanome, who looked at decentralized science and the way that the blockchain can improve peer reviews. We've talked to Principal Z, who was looking at a whole new high school credit system on the blockchain that is going to create more equity among schooling, especially for public school students and those who have access to not as high and good quality of education. So these are some outside of the box use cases that we've already kind of looked at on Web3 Warriors from a blockchain perspective. And so today we're looking at travel and the fact that the travel industry, of course, is massive, multi-billion, multi-trillion dollar industry that a lot of different countries rely on, some more than others, for their economy. And so when we look at the blockchain and the opportunity for peer-to-peer transactions, open source, really transparent, accountable transactions for, both the person, the tourist who's wanting to travel to another destination, but also the hosts. There's a lot of advantages that can come from everything being really transparent and accountable on chain when it comes to, any type of snafus and things that can come up in traveling, as we all know. I myself looking forward to traveling to Miami for Art Basel near the end of this year. And I know that there's a lot of interesting NFT events and Web3 events that take place. So traveling is also a really big element of Web3 and the NFT culture, more so now, I think, as quote unquote bear markets happening and people want to connect in real life and, be maybe a little bit more sure that this is real, because it's not as real until you actually meet in real life and have these conversations with creators and builders and developers. So that's an important element. So I thought it'd be great to talk with Winding Tree, and I'm really grateful to have Vincent here to really look at how blockchain can improve the travel industry and what Winding Tree is doing to make that a reality. Vincent, maybe before we talk about Winding Tree and really its mission and its vision, maybe you can give us a little bit of background on yourself and what brought you to Web3 and the blockchain. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave, for the introduction. So I'm originally from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, where I studied from the get-go, actually, hospitality. Also specialized in hospitality through a master's degree in Portugal, and I really have hospitality running through my veins from when I was a child, when I was born in my family's hotel back in Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
And that's really where I explored the problems that travel has, right? And a major problem being distribution, meaning, how do you connect your guests and your hotel, right? There are different ways of doing that. And how I really got into Web3 is, okay, I was looking into the distribution problem, right? Being Booking.com, Expedia, all the big intermediaries, and what is the effect on hotels for that, and especially for the small independent hotel that doesn't have a lot of things to say against a big intermediary like like big chains like Hilton or Marriott. So I was researching that exact problem. How can we improve that situation, that relationship, right? And I was looking at Web2 solutions, right? At marketplaces, maybe a better marketplace that costs less, that doesn't hijack your brand on SEO, and then I found about blockchain and Web3 and how we can in Web3 solve that by implementing these new and innovative technologies called blockchains, NFTs, smart contracts, all of the shebang
Sure.
that we talk talk about daily now. So that's how I started going into Web3, and I've been with Binding Tree as of the start of this year in March, and I currently am the head of partnerships. So I talk to big hotel chains to convince them to join us in our Web3 contest. But also big organizations that travel around the world, and also obviously conferences that also host a lot of international crypto and blockchain and NFT conferences around the world. And all these people fly in from anywhere in the world, and they will need to have a way to stay, right?
Yeah.
And why not do that in a Web3 way that we can offer? So
Well,
yeah,
I'm thinking,
that's what I. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm just imagining, it would be really cool. Even me, myself, procrastinated and still booking my stuff here. It would be cool to have the option to book with crypto, and I think what do you see as the real advantage of having that blockchain transaction, bringing in the peer-to-peer in the travel industry? And what has it been like when you're talking to these major hotel chains, and pitching this concept? Yeah.
Yeah, sure thing. So let me ask you a question to just contemplate the situation. How much do you think a hotelier, a hotel owner, gets charged by Booking.com or Expedia per booking?
I would imagine it's a percentage, right? Like maybe like 5% or something. I don't know, 10%, 5%.
Yeah. So it's on average between 15 and 30%.
Oh wow.
And yeah, if you look at big cities like Amsterdam, you can't even join Booking.com below 20% if you're in a certain center area. So we're always talking about big intermediary powers and how they manipulate and extract that power from just a common hotelier, 24 rooms, just making his living, and they get at least a 20-25% cut on that booking.
It was a pretty big hit.
And any Web2 intermediary that we now know, at present day, always started with, please join my platform. We don't have many partners. If you join us right now, you'll be growing with us, and we'll charge. Indeed, that's how it started, 5-10%,
right,
with all these big Web2 intermediaries. But if you look now, a major part of the bookings from hotels, they are from Expedia or Booking.com or a third party. And the same goes for airlines. The same goes for tour operators. It's a travel-wide, industry-wide problem. The costs, but also the power that you have, that they have over these creators, I would say, of experiences like hoteliers, like airlines.
Right.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurs, right? As far as like the businesses. That's crazy, because when I think about it myself and I go through those different places, whether it's Priceline, Expedia, whatever, and you find a great deal, and so no matter how good your deal is, they're getting another 20% of that. So the real price is significantly lower, right? So when you look at it from the customer perspective or from the tourist perspective, will they be realizing those savings as well when going through Winding Tree instead of one of these Web2 entities?
Yeah, that is the aim, right? That is the aim. We recently done a price comparison analysis, relatively limited, but even though it gave us great insight on how competitive we are using Web3 technologies, and we are on average 5 to 6% cheaper than the big intermediaries that we just talked about. So yes, indeed, travelers will, in fact, on average, see a decline in price. But I want to go beyond price, right? Price is a super important factor here. But what we think anybody can basically do that. You raise some money from a VC, you put in some marketing, and you compensate that cost difference, right?
Right.
What we are really heading towards in Web3 combined with travel is really bringing back the power to these creators, to the small businesses that we have nowadays, to the hosts on Airbnb. That also gets charged 14-15% nowadays. They also started off with 3%
I
for
was
the
gonna
host.
say, they used to have a tiny fraction, and now it's like up at 15%.
Oh yeah.
So you wouldn't see
Yeah.
Winding Tree as kind of a competitor to Airbnb, or do you see it as a complement?
I would say it isn't a competitor because look at Airbnb, look at Booking.com, Expedia. They have massive marketing budgets. I'm talking, correct me if I'm wrong, but Booking.com is, I believe, the second highest advertisement payer to Google, right? Out of all industries, out of all businesses,
I believe
they
it.
have
Yeah.
huge marketing budget. So you're not going to beat that, right?
Right.
And they are also able to offer certain discounts through their own loyalty program. So you're not going to beat that. So what we're really aiming towards is making it a better way, a more sustainable way of booking from a business perspective, but also from an environmental perspective, which we can also later talk about.
For sure.
So yes, price is important, but there's a lot more that we're trying to establish in travel with Web3.
There's a lot more to the value add. It's not just the dollar. So it's kind of across the chain of requirements, right? Just kind of streamlining it, making it a better experience. So maybe if I had to ask, like, what is the mission of Winding Tree? I think that, like you just identified there, whether it's the percentage that hotel owners or airline owners, whatever the case may be, are losing out, being able to reduce that, but it sounds like there's a bigger mission. Maybe that speaks to the sustainability angle, but what is the mission, and how are you what's the problem you're solving, I guess is the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the mission of Winding Tree really is to make travel a more sustainable industry, right? And sustainable from different perspectives, right? From the business, environmental, but there's so much trouble going on in the industry, and what has revealed itself also during the pandemic. I mean, let's take my family's hotel as an example, right? Back in Holland, very small boutique hotel, nothing fancy. They paid in the last 25 years over 1 million euros in commissions, right? Now Booking.com obviously helped them with revenue generating,
right?
But they're taking
at a big cost, right?
Yeah, exactly. And all hotels and restaurants and the entire travel industry was basically doomed to fail and doomed to collapse in the last 3 years, right? During
2020, yeah.
It was a huge crisis, right? Almost no support from governments, no revenue flowing, but you would need to, you need to pay your bills. You need to pay your full-time staff, you need to pay your electricity, your fridge money, right? That's how you call it. You have to keep running the fridge. You have to keep running the heat, right?
Yeah, a lot of overhead costs.
No matter,
sure.
Exactly overhead costs. So and you would expect from Booking.com that invited 25-30 years ago a small boutique hotel on their platform, almost begging to join to help out, right? I mean, Booking.com is the most, Booking Group Holdings is the most profitable business in the history of travel, making billions and billions of profit. But no, they didn't help out any of their partners, right?
Right.
They even requested government support because of their losses
and increased their prices, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a shareholder point of view instead of a stakeholder point of view, right? And during which we're talking about creators and we're talking about hoteliers, but also for travelers, you shouldn't think that Web3 is only affecting the creators. in travel. It is also about the traveler. When you think about big intermediaries, and you try to book on the intermediary websites, right? All of a sudden you see last room available, last seat available on airline.
Yeah.
Book now. If you don't want to pay 200 euros extra tomorrow.
Misleading stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, misleading, dark patterns. And that kind of stuff is not going to happen anymore in Web3. That kind of anxiety feeling is not going to happen. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be faster, more transparent. It's going to be better for the traveler and the creator, whether it's an airline, a tour operator, or a hotel. It's going to be better for those two most important users, right? Two most important stakeholders, instead of the intermediary, the big intermediary in between.
Wow, that's a great mission. Looking at that, and I think it comes down to your subjective mission, right? Like, there's nothing to stop somebody else trying to bring a little bit more of that Web 2, whether you want to call it kind of predatory, however you want to frame it, but some of that negative part can be brought into Web3. Unfortunately, we've seen FOMO in Web3 playing a big element, and really trying to tell people, oh, you need to buy this now, or tomorrow it's going to be 10 times more expensive, and all this kind of stuff. So it's not that it can't exist in the Web3 space, but you're very intentionally building out a solution, right? So a whole sustainable ecosystem for travel essentially is what Winding Tree is trying to build, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's really ambitious and very cool. So it's been plugging away since 2017, right? Maybe we'll look under the hood a little bit. Like what blockchain is it built on? I guess it's Ethereum, right? Or it's a layer 2 on Ethereum. But what are the mechanics behind it, and what's been happening, I guess, since 2017 when you kind of launched initially?
Yeah, so when we launched initially, we were, again, like I told you before, we were the first travel project in Web3. So there was nothing built for travel, let alone for, any how would you say this, practical solutions in Web3. Back in 2017 and 18 and 19, we were paying tons of gas fees on Ethereum blockchain. And it just wasn't stable enough. It wasn't scalable for anybody in the industry, and particularly in the travel industry, because in the travel industry, it's a high volume transaction market. Not as much as in DeFi or in the financial market, but travel is a huge transactional market. So you need to have solutions that are scalable, fast, and cheap. And back in the day, back in 2017 until I would say 2019, we didn't have the ability that we have now to facilitate big, large, fast, small transactions like we do now with stablecoins, right? And that is why we now work with Gnosis and Polygon to facilitate stablecoin transactions all around the world, right? If you now go on win.so, on our beta website, you will see that you can book anywhere in the world, all major cities. We are constantly working on providing extra destinations, but for now you can go to any major city, take Tokyo, Amsterdam, Paris, New York, Detroit, wherever, and you can book with stablecoins. And it's going to be an instant reservation. It's going to be a lot cheaper, and you're not going to have to pay or any hotelier insane fees, right? And your question was what have we been doing over the past years? Again, until 2019 we didn't really have the technology. The technology wasn't there to facilitate what we're currently doing, right? Launching a travel marketplace where anybody can basically book their stablecoins, book their travels with stablecoins in a fairly fast way.
Right.
And now we can. But since then, we've been building a lot of funding. Plumbing. A lot of coding, smart contracts. We've been doing some consultancy as well. You'll see in our press releases that we work together with American Airlines, with Lufthansa, with a lot of providers to make their distribution and also their customer experience way more seamless, way more cheaper, transparent, faster. And this had all this all I think led to our latest project, Win.so.
Right.
And finally, putting something out there that we're ready for the market to consume.
Mm-hmm. And it says at the top here it's in beta. I was just clicking through from the website. It's very cool. So it's bookable. You don't have my city on there yet in Winnipeg here. I know we're not the majors yet, but no, it's a really awesome concept. So looking at when you look at accommodations, right? And you can book your hotel. So do you guys do like bundle packages with the hotel, flight, and everything yet, or is mostly hotels just booking your stay and then kind of handle your flight the traditional way?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the latter. We're on. It's a at this moment. As of this moment, we don't do any packages. We just do accommodation. Also because we want to do it right from the get go. If we're going to facilitate or to sell packages, is a beast on its own.
No doubt. I can imagine.
It's
it's a lot of negotiating, right? Like when you look at all those deals and you got different parties, all these different parties that are, you got the hotel, you got the airline, so it's a lot to consider.
Yeah, but it's on the radar. It's on the radar, and just like airlines are on the radar in the near future, we're also going to integrate airlines, flights, and we'll be looking at events, tours, because again, a lot of the problems that accommodation providers endure are the same in short-term rentals like Airbnb, but also on flights, and also in tours and events. They differ, but a lot is similar and can get solved by a lot of the same technology, so to say.
That's really cool. Okay, so I don't want to gloss over the technicalities. So you're saying you work with Gnosis and Polygon. So Polygon's kind of the layer 2 that's helping you avoid those gas fees that you had to deal with in those early years, right? And then Gnosis. And so your stable coin, would it be like the USDC stable coin, or is it a separate?
Yeah. So it depends on the location you're searching, because as you can imagine, some destinations don't allow for particular stablecoins, but let's, for example, Paris will differ from Bogota, right? In Bogota, you can pay with a local stablecoin, and in Paris, you can also pay with the local stablecoin J Euro, which is launched on Gnosis chain as well. Which is back to the euro. And in the US, you can pay with DAI or extra, right? So that depends a bit on the destination, but it's very easy. It's instant, right? It's transparent. You can see the transaction happening on the chain. Something that you can't. How many times have you been on an airline website or an intermediary website, and you confirm your reservation, and then you don't get a confirmation in your email, or it's a little shady, right?
Yeah. It's like, didn't I just pay for this? What happened?
Exactly. It says in the subject, it says booked. Thanks for booking with us. We will send you a confirmation within 24 hours. And then you're like, I'm sorry, what just happened? I thought I booked my dream vacation for 3 weeks to the Caribbean or whatever. And I paid $2,000, and you're asking me to wait 24 hours? No,
it is a little sketchy.
That is exactly. It's one of those practical problems that we experience here in Web2, and that we're trying to avoid in Web3. Because imagine putting a smart contract on that, putting some stablecoins on that.
Exactly.
That will go a lot more seamless. You will see the transaction happening. You have proof that your payment has gone through, and you instantly get a confirmation. And that could be even an NFT, right? That you could even, I imagine we will talk later about that, but that NFT could even be resold if you'd like. Let's say it's a very in-demand flight. You could even speculate on it. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's one of the possibilities that you could do.
Yeah, no doubt. I definitely am going to ask about what your use case was for NFTs. But I was also curious, like looking at your scaling, and I guess you're busy doing this right now. You were talking about reaching out to hotel chains, airlines. But, like you said, you have quite a few major cities there. But, someone like me and maybe in a not as popular city, looking at, wanting to do this in the future, what is your kind of plan trajectory for scaling and getting this into more corners? Is it just a matter of, like you're doing right now, actively making those connections, networking, creating those partnerships, and then convincing the different airlines, the different airports, I guess, that you're a good way to go, and you're innovative and setting trends, and this blockchain thing's not going away?
Yeah, exactly. So you hit the spot, right? We're talking to all major hotel groups, right? All major hotel groups. You can I can't name them, but you can imagine about joining us in this Web3 context. Also, major airlines. I named a few already that we're actively collaborating with, and it's always an interesting conversation, right?
Yeah, I could imagine.
What you saw two years ago, we didn't have these. We were having these conversations as well, but those conversations went a lot more fast into a negative
Right.
conclusion,
Yeah.
saying that it's too scary, not ready, and how.
Yeah, all the usual FUD.
The usual FUD, and the collapse of FTX obviously also doesn't help with it. It's not so much about the decline or increase of prices. Personally, I don't really look at those charts. And I go to a lot of Web3 conferences, and especially the Ethereum conferences. I don't hear any discussion about prices. Whether it's 4,000, 1,000, it doesn't matter. I went to conferences in high time. I went to conferences in low time. I had the exact same conversations, and none of them which includes price, which is amazing of this ecosystem, the Ethereum ecosystem, I think, especially.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it doesn't help that these big companies go down, and mainstream media picks up only the bad stuff and the negative stuff, and you won't hear about any building. You won't hear about development and achievements. No, you will only hear about the FTX collapse, and that is unfortunate. But we have to work with it.
Yeah. Well, when a lot of people lose millions of dollars, unfortunately, that'll create headlines for sure. And especially when you've got these different billionaires fighting it out on Twitter, adding all that drama to it. It's something else for sure. That's really interesting, and I'm glad you brought up that point as far as the price point, because definitely those who have their heads down, the people who are really building, those who see the value in the technology, that's where the inspiring work is coming, and that's where there's a lot to look forward to. And something like Winding Tree, unfortunately, that mainstream media won't shine a light on what you guys are doing, trying to revolutionize the travel industry and create a peer-to-peer, more seamless and more fair, more equitable travel industry, right? And that's just one little example. Like we were saying at the top of the show, there's a lot of other use cases that are outside of the box of what people think of maybe when they're looking at the blockchain and NFTs, but are still very much going to impact the way we live our lives and the way we take advantage of technology, really. When looking at NFTs, what are your thoughts as far as I'm looking at a lot of businesses that are looking at NFTs from a kind of loyalty program perspective, and I imagine in travel, that's kind of you almost need a loyalty program if you're going to be taken seriously, it seems, in the travel industry. So is that something that Winding Tree is considered, or do you have other use cases for NFTs that you're going to integrate?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we did back in April in a pilot we ran in a major European city is that you could check in with an NFT. Right, the hotel staff would ask for your NFT, literally.
That's awesome.
We had the DoubleTree by Hilton joining us in that effort. So props for to them. Nice. They have a very, very nice general manager that is super, super innovative, and you need those people. Those young.
For sure.
Young-minded, I should say, people that want to collaborate with us adventurers, I would say. So that was a great help. So what we did actually is we would train the hotel staff in terms of, okay, how do you scan and how do you validate an NFT? How does MetaMask operate? So we actually got just your receptionist at the front desk asking a guest to show their NFT to redeem their reservation, so to say,
Nice.
which was super interesting to us, and also that was a nice use case for that. But you could definitely see the struggle at times when things didn't go as planned, right? If an NFT couldn't be redeemed, well, you didn't have any personal information on file, right? That is one of the things that we did during that time, during that pilot. Travelers didn't have to fill in any personal information, but then if the NFT can't get redeemed for whatever reason, how do you validate that it's actually the guest if you don't have any personal information on file? Right. So that's one of the challenges that we face, and now we're going to we scrap that and we're going for a more scalable approach, a bit less decentralized, unfortunately, but sometimes you have to make a trade-off between decentralization and centralization. We have to, what I always repeat when I'm talking to a lot of people in this space is that, look, we're, especially in travel, if we want to make this work, we have to build bridges. We can't be talking to only to Web3 people, only developer to developer and partnerships to partnerships in Web3. No, right. We have to be talking to Web2 to make global adoption possible. And if we only keep in this bubble of Web3, we're not going to achieve what we want to achieve. And that may take a little bit more centralization, but we have to keep striving for global adoption. But I also see another point of view saying, look, if we're not going to be as decentralized as we want, we're not going to do it at all, right? It's this or the other. Yeah. Some projects. So that there's also something. There's also something to say for that. But I'm pretty convinced that if we want to have global adoption, mass adoption, that we need to build bridges with the Web2 world. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And one of the ways I always say, summarize that, is connect to disconnect, right? We have to connect to the Web2 world to disconnect them from the old traditional ways of doing business, so to say.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it is always a balancing act. I mentioned to you earlier that I work with the Dream Conduit DAO, and the Dream Conduit DAO is actually a nonprofit, carbon neutral 501c3. So it's gone through all of the hoops you had to jump through to actually get, recognition from the government to be a 501c3, right? But in doing so, you pretty much have to be somewhat centralized, even just to create the entity and actually create the legal, framework and make submissions and all that on behalf of the company or on behalf of the organization. And then the goal is to kind of decentralize as you grow and expand, right? And to your point about talking to Web2 people, which is also part of what the Dream Conduit is focused on doing, which is really reaching out to creatives and artists and people who maybe aren't aware of Web3 or just don't think they want to get involved with the blockchain, and kind of show them the use case. But also this podcast, of course, is devoted to that as well, really highlighting the creator economy. So yeah, totally on board with you as far as needing to speak in a language that kind of resonates with everybody. And I think everybody's aware of what the creator economy was, because we all know YouTube, we all know social media, quote unquote, influencers and people, creating revenue for themselves that way. And now I think blockchain and Web3 is basically just adding a whole new layer of financial sovereignty, a whole new layer of digital ownership, so it's really exciting. And yeah, looking at Winding Tree and what you're trying to do with travel, that is really interesting what you say about using an NFT to actually check into the hotel and some of the headaches that might have created as far as the connection between the personal identity and the actual NFT someone has in their wallet. And I'm sure there are some fixes for that, but are the fixes, concise and streamlined enough to make it worth it, right? Or is it just a bigger headache for everybody involved? And I think that's that balancing act. Unfortunately, when trying to be as decentralized as possible, you often run into those kind of friction points, I think. And maybe we'll evolve. Yeah. We'll get there, right? So what was the solution that you put in place instead of that when it comes to using NFTs?
So instead of using NFTs, we took a step. By the way, no, during that pilot, the immediate solution was me biking for 20 minutes as fast as I could in Amsterdam to resolve the matter at the check-in desk.
Not very scalable. Not a very scalable solution.
Exactly. So, well, it could be scalable at one point. If you have a lot more ambassadors in cities worldwide that that extinguish fires.
Call center. Yeah, basically. Even then, you need a call center.
Exactly. Or you put in a maximum of 100 bookings each day, and there's a lot more avenues. Right. Go. But yeah, it's not as scalable. Like if you really want to have an impact in travel, you need to come from a different angle, so to say. So for now, we're requiring personal details, such as your full name, your date of birth, and your email address. Mm-hmm. But as opposed to Web2 intermediaries, we do not monetize on that, right? We will never monetize on that data.
That's good to know.
That's a promise. And it's also, you can validate that, right? We do everything open source. We're a non-profit, so why would we, right? We are actually non-profit, open source. You can copy paste or GitHub. And
that's interesting. Why the non-profit route? Was that necessary, you think, to kind of stay true to that Web3 ethos, that decentralized ethos? I didn't know you were a non-profit.
Yeah, we're a totally community-funded project. We had our ICO in 2018, I believe, and we're still running on those funds. So there's no VCs or anyone holding any strings above our heads. But apart from that, how that was the initial intake, and we're still aiming we're still continuing on that road. But again, Winding Tree is not another intermediary, another OTA or whatsoever. We're really I would say we are an enabler for Web3, right? We're an enabler for hoteliers and travelers to find each other. And if that's we develop the technology, Winding Tree develops the technology. But if there's a company out there that wants to build on Winding Tree's technology, yeah, you can use our smart contracts, you can use our protocols, you can use a different front end, a different marketing, a different brand on it.
Right.
But we will provide you all the technology. Yes, and then 1% of every transaction actually goes to our public treasury, or DAO, where our community can vote on different proposals in the future. And the community, by the way, consists of travelers, developers, business people like me, but also airlines, also hotels, from independent to big hotel chains, right? So they will all be able to vote on different proposals, whether it's for whatever proposal they would like to vote on, which is publicly discussed in our Discord channels, right? We have an active community.
Made the mistake of clicking on your Discord there. I'll have to join it after. They don't want to pop it up in front of your screen here. But yeah, it's really cool. I'm very, very interested. So when you talk about your ICO kind of forming that basis of funding, and that was for the LIF token, right? So it's LIF token. And so that's still kind of on the market, and people, if theoretically wanted to support Winding Tree, they can purchase the LIF token. Do you have any stake mechanics or anything like that?
At this moment, not. No. But what the LIF token is the enabler for us to build, right? All the initial investors when we had the ICO, they are the enablers of what we're doing day by day. And the LIF token hasn't been performing, well, what's going now?
Nothing's performing.
But we're still
right
here.
Right? Yeah.
Nothing is performing. Yeah, exactly. There's no good example. But I think what speaks for itself is that after 5 years, we are still there, and 95% of all projects that had an ICO, with all due respect, aren't here. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're still building. We're still every day, during, well, let's take it here in the weekend we're advertising and talking about our project, right? That's how
No
much we
doubt.
care, and we've been doing this for a long time now, and we're going to achieve success, and little by little we'll get there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's really exciting, man. It's really interesting. And I love that it's community oriented and that it's really kind of building from the ground up. So it's the way a Web3 organization should be built. And really for travel of all things, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different ways that can go wrong and that can go left. So to be, truly guided by the community and doing this with such sustainability focus is definitely admirable. So very cool. So another subject we always like to focus on at Web3 Warriors is the metaverse. I don't know. I feel like something like this use case could be tailor-made to have like a little shop in the metaverse. People walk in and they just book their flight right there with a stable coin from a Web3 metaverse, maybe Sandbox, Decentraland, crypto voxels. Is this something that Winding Tree has considered? Are you looking at expanding into the metaverse at all?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think there's a lot of potential for the metaverse, and especially if you look to hotels, but also airlines. Imagine, in terms of virtual reality in the metaverse, that you can choose, you can go through different rooms, you can go to your suite, you can go to your basic, standard room, you can, test out different rooms, different views. What does a booking platform actually say when you book a room or airline seat? Okay, yeah, it has a room with a view and a king size bed, right? Okay, but what is that view going to be looking like?
Right.
Is it going to be portrait? Is it going to be sea view, street view? Is it going to be first level, 10th level? So those are things that VR in metaverse can definitely help with, and also airline seats, obviously. But I would also say brands can expressive brands, like for example, Soho House or Citizen M, or even Zoku in Vienna, Paris, and Amsterdam, or these outspoken brands that, or Moxie even, that are totally suitable for metaverse. And also more traditional brands in the hotel industry, like Marriott, or kind of the old American motel kind of vibe brands have an opportunity now to differentiate themselves from the rest. So there's huge opportunity for the metaverse in the travel industry, and from my point of view, particularly for the accommodation providers. In terms of art development in Winding Tree, we haven't focused on it that much because we really want to solve the plumbing. The plumbing is so important, David. It's so important. The distribution of travel content. So with content, I mean whether it's airline seats or accommodations. So that's,
Yeah, just
rooms.
getting those real core mechanics down, right?
It's so important, and if we don't fix that with Web3, we can do some things with metaverse. We can do some things with NFTs. We can, but in the end, it's really the plumbing that we need to fix. It's really that relationship, that transactional relationship that currently is happening. We need to fix that in a more value-added relationship between the traveler and the hotel, and we need to kick out that big intermediary that takes 15 to 30% of the cost. And just as a last example of how big of a problem this is, take tourism dependent islands like Aruba, right? In Central America, or just above South America, right? They are highly reliant on tourism, and just out of my head, I believe it's 30% of their GDP. So take that 30% of GDP out of a destination where the whole local economy relies on, right?
Right.
And if you look at the cut of these intermediaries, again, 15 to 30%. And don't forget the payment service providers, right? Visa, American Express, all those big guys,
Yeah.
are taking an additional 2 to 5%, right? And that is a big problem if 30% of your GDP is reliant on tourism. That's a huge problem. That's a huge leakage of your local economy that is flowing out. We're talking 20 or even 30% of your revenue, right? And of course, not all accommodation and airline seats and whatnot are booked through those big intermediaries. There's also a lot of direct bookings, right? But even then, it's a huge cut that you want to keep into the local economy, and that is also where we're heading with Web3 and travel. Is making that transaction more sustainable for the local economy from a business perspective. To keep it in, to invest it into the local economy, local independent hotels, local independent restaurants, and to stop that drainage of life, basically.
No doubt. Yeah, that's definitely a lot of work to truly create that Web3 industry, essentially, right? Take an industry that is so much, you know, like you were mentioning earlier, a lot of the dark side of it, a lot of misleading information, a lot of just trying to pressure people and create high stress situations so that they spend more money than they need to, all that fun stuff. Yeah. And really taking the Web3 ethos and trying to shake things up. So I can imagine that is a lot to take on. But I do like what you said as far as the hotels and other spaces being able to take advantage of the metaverse. And in the future, I can see, you know, partnering with Winding Tree and being able to use their stablecoin purchasing and booking within the metaverse to actually do that. So on that point about the Web3 ethos and the sustainability, so you've kind of hit on that, keeping more money in the local community's pockets. We see that, you know, even in the art space, right? We're talking about cutting out these galleries that are taking 30-50% of these artists cut, and now they can just sell direct to their collectors on the blockchain. So similarly with you know, you're offering, whether it's airlines, whether it's hotels, the ability to actually sell direct, you know, peer-to-peer on the blockchain and cut out a lot of those extra costs, and thereby ideally invest in their community, invest in their families if it's, you know, a smaller business. So I guess that's the kind of social sustainability. But how are you also, you know, being sustainable on the environmental side of things?
Yeah, so one of the it's a good question. You know, you in travel, you know, we have a huge impact on that, right? And let's say we can have a huge impact on that. And one of the ways we're doing that is collaborating with the Toucan protocol that allows travelers that book on Win.so with stablecoins to offset their carbon emissions on the blockchain, right? You get a certificate, an NCT certificate, they call it, not an NFT, an NCT certificate, I believe. And the traveler is able to offset their carbon emissions. And that is going out of our cut, right? We are not a for-profit organization. We work with for-profit organizations as well, of course, like our a corporate arm, Simart, that is a for-profit organization, because again, we need to build those bridges between Web 2 and Web 3, and our company Simart is doing that. But as for Winding Tree will only charge 1% that's going to the DAO, and gives back more or less 6% in terms of carbon offsetting opportunity for the traveler. So that's what we're doing in terms of sustainability. But I think that is the most tangible example. And I always like to refer to, you know, what the thing with Aruba, right? From a business sustainability. My personal belief, I would say, the most important impact that we have is on the local economy.
No doubt. Yeah, no, I can dig that, you know, and I feel like really at its core, Web3 blockchain is empowering local communities, right? It's empowering the transaction, like both sides of the transaction, you know, whether it's an individual or a business, you know, a small business, family owned business, whatever the case may be, being able to cut out those middle people that we've been talking about, or the traveler being able to just know, you know, have a little bit more certainty, and maybe even being able to actually pinpoint who they want to support, and maybe you get a little bit more of the background of the entity, you know, like the host that you're supporting, and there's that whole aspect, right? And you're feeling better about the person, or like if it's Airbnb type scenario, right, where someone's renting out their house or something. I can just foresee a scenario where traveling becomes a little bit more socially sustainable, but actually you want to travel with the intent of helping the people you're traveling to, right? And maybe what Winding Tree is doing kind of instills this mindset, which I don't think is super common right now, outside of obviously people who are traveling specifically to do, you know, good work somewhere else. But in general, when people are traveling just for pleasure, you're probably not thinking like, oh, how is the person, the host, benefiting from this, and how's the host community benefiting from this? And maybe with Winding Tree's kind of change in ethos, you'll have more of that conversation happening, right?
We hope so. We hope so. That is what we believe is going to happen.
Very cool. Very cool. Looking at the blockchain space more broadly, looking at, especially in the travel industry, maybe, I think you probably get this a lot. People just think that's too complicated. You know, why should we go this route? Why embrace the blockchain and not just stick with traditional Web2 reliable, quote unquote, reliable systems, you know? So what do you say to those who just, like you mentioned earlier, are either scared of it or just think it's too complicated? Why embrace blockchain?
Choose your poison. Choose your poison. You know, that's what I always say. Choose your poison. Do you want to be manipulated as a traveler? Do you want to still pay 25% commissions as a hotelier? No? Okay. Let's jump over to Web3. It's a lot to learn, sure, but we're here to guide you. We're here building solutions, and jump on board while you still can, and say goodbye to those old traditional intermediaries that manipulate you, but also take insanely big cuts from hoteliers and have all the power over them, quite frankly.
That's amazing. You know, whether it's social manipulation, economic manipulation, you know, it's real. And Web3 is trying to address that, you know, and there are, like I always like to mention, because I don't like to have the rose-colored glasses, there are those elements within Web3 as well. But the power of decentralization, the power of organizations like Winding Tree that are truly DAO structured, that are truly built on community first kind of ethos. They've committed openly to not use your data for their own monetary gains, which leads to all kinds of other shenanigans of basically trying to like poke and prod your data and incentivize certain actions from you on their app and all that fun stuff that we see from some other Web2 organizations, you know, and this is how it starts. You have to really intentionally build it from the ground up. So definitely, you know, want to wish you guys the best of luck. It sounds like it's a lot of building. It's a lot of rubbing shoulders, rubbing elbows, and convincing people that this innovative solution is the way to go. I did actually just have one quick question on the Vidir protocol. So this was custom built by your team, and that's part of your open source kind of tech that you're offering as well. What is the main pitch of Vidir before we go? Yeah,
it's a good question. Vidir protocol would allow any independent hotelier or host or airline to connect to 100% decentralized distribution. It takes a lot of integrating, it takes a lot of switching to new innovative systems that are currently not able to connect to completely decentralized systems. So the Vidir protocol is sort of a vision what we have for the new way of infrastructure, distribution infrastructure of airline tickets or accommodation.
Very cool. Very
Simply
cool.
said.
So it's, I like that. I like that wrap up. And, you know, I'm always interested when there's a brand new protocol that was built by an organization that is now actively building upon it. You know, it's really exciting. And the fact that it is open source, so anybody can go look this up. You can check it out at windingtree.com. All their information is there, and look into it. Yeah, whether it's the Lyft token, Vidir protocol, win.so, the new marketplace that's in beta. It's really, really interesting. So we're going to keep tabs on what you're doing at Winding Tree, and hopefully I'll see you around more and more as I'm traveling to these Web3 spaces, and maybe one day soon I'll be able to book my flight or book my hotel at my next Web3 conference through Winding Tree and win.so.
Really forward to it. For sure. We look forward to it. Thank you so much for
All
the
right.
interesting talk.
Awesome, Vincent.
It was a pleasure.
I appreciate
Anytime.
it. Appreciate it. All right. Until next time, we'll be live next Saturday. We actually have Dr. Jane Thomason joining us next Saturday. It's going to be a really fun conversation, a big metaverse advocate. So we're looking forward to that. And until then, thank you again, Vincent. And we'll catch everybody in the metaverse. Till next time. Peace out.
Thank you.